Rambam. We continue with the laws of the Holy Temple. Proper time for that. During the 9 days. Let's go into the laws of Bias Mishkan, coming into the sanctuary and the laws of it. And today we learn about the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. Halacha number 1. It's not in the book over there. Actually, you know what? Give me a moment. Put it up over here. Okay, give me a moment, folks. Achaim. Okay. Again. Thank you for learning it.
Good morning.
While you do that, you stop any bits on.
Okay. Oh, look at that. Okay, so the high priest, which is the Kohen Gadol in Hebrew, enters the Holy of Holies each year only on Yom Kippur. This is the Holy of Holies. It's the most western part. This is the east. This is the north. This is the south. Right? It's over here, the Holy of Holies. This is the Holies. This is the Ulam. This is where the altar for the animal sacrifices. This is where the Kohan, the Levites were. The Israelites over here. This is the women's courtyard. Basic rundown. Okay. An ordinary priest may enter the sanctuary for service every day. Sanctuary means the holies, right?
Not the holy boy.
Right. So the Kohen were all warned not to enter the sanctuary or the Holy of Holies when they are not in the midst of service. As the verse says, he shall not come into the holy chamber at all times. This refers to the Holy of Holies. With the curtain, this warns the Kohen against unwarranted entry into the entire temple. Okay, a Kohen, priest, whether an ordinary priest or a high priest who enters the Holy of Holies on any other days of the year, right, or the high priest who enters there on Yom Kippur outside the time of service is liable for death at the hand of heaven. Right, as it says, he shall not die. That's what the verse says, implying that if he does come when he shouldn't come, that he will die, meaning early death. Huh? Like Aaron's sons, right? Or like in the times of the Second Temple, there were hundreds of Kohen Gadol that died year after year because they were not worthy. They were not, well, we're going to learn more about that. It's not really this point over here. It's coming not at the right time. There was, even if when they were in the right time, they were not suitable. No, they did everything. They just were not holy people and therefore didn't have, anyways, but that's actually not here. That's not over here. Okay. How many times does he enter on Yom Kippur? 4, as will be explained in the appropriate place, which that's the laws of Yom Kippur, not here. If he enters the 5th time, he's liable for death at the hand of heaven, which means early death. right?
And childless, but children.
Yeah, not necessarily. Yeah, it means early death. Okay, number 4. 1, whether an ordinary Kohen or the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, who enters the sacred chamber outside the Holy of Holies, not for the sake of service, nor prostrating oneself, is liable for lashes. But he's not liable for death. But lashes, yes, because you've transgressed a prohibition, right? Now, remember, we've said lashes you only get when you've been warned by 2 witnesses, right? You have to be warned by 2 witnesses in order to get lashes. This is right from the above verses. It states, before the covering that is open, that is upon the ark, so that he will not die. Implied is that for an unauthorized entry into the Holy of Holies, he's liable for death. But entering the remainder of the sanctuary, which is the Holies, right, where you have the candelabra, where you have the golden altar, and where you have the showbread on the table, right, that's in the Holies, the sanctuary, is merely a violation of a negative commandment, not punishable by lashes. And again, it's an implication from the verses we learn. A kohen, whether an ordinary kohen or the kohen gadol, the high priest, who departs from the temple, is liable for death at the hand of heaven only in the midst of the service. In other words, in the middle of doing the service and you walk out. You walk out, liable for premature death. Right? From the, as the verse says, from the entrance of the tent of meeting, you shall not depart lest you die. Implied is that you should not abandon the service and leave hastily and in a panic because of this decree. Similarly, the charge issued by the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, he shall not depart the temple, applies only in the midst of service, that he should not abandon his service and depart. Halacha. Yeah, don't leave in the middle of davening. That's I don't want to say that. Okay, we're good so far? Okay, halacha number 6. If so, why was this warning repeated for the Kohen Gadol? In other words, if it's applicable to a regular Kohen, then it's applicable to the high priest too, just the same, all the more so. He's even, more important that he doesn't depart in the middle, right? If he's a high priest, that means he is also a Kohen, a priest, right? So yes, why is it? Because there's a difference between the laws that apply to him and those that apply to an ordinary Kohen. When an ordinary Kohen was in the midst of his service in the temple, and he heard that a person from whom he's obligated to mourn has died, he should not perform sacrificial service even though he does not leave the temple, because he is in acute state of mourning. He just heard, God forbid, a loved one passed away. He's not allowed to do the service now. He's in an acute state of mourning, right? The day of the passing and the day of the burial is called an acute state of mourning. And he's not allowed to do the service, but he can't leave the temple. Because even though he does not leave the temple, because he's in an acute state of mourning. If he performs the service while he's in an acute state of mourning, he profanes his service, whether it is an offering of an individual sacrifice or communal offering. So if he's in the middle of the offering, he's got to stop. If he continues, right, he profanes the service. A priest, meaning a Kohen Gadol, by contrast, performs sacrificial service while he's in a state of acute mourning, as implied by the verse, from the temple he should not depart and not profane, implied that he should remain in the temple and perform the service in which he is involved, and it does not become profane. So the Kohen Gadol is different. He has to continue his service. In other words, his personal loss isn't superseded by the service that he is involved in, right? Because just on a spiritual level, because he represents the entire people, because the entirety of the Jewish people is greater than the personal loss that a person has. Okay. Halacha number 7. What is a source that teaches us the service of one who's in acute state of mourning is invalid? Right? In other words, Kohen Gadol, he has to continue the service, right? A regular Kohen has to stop the service.
Or the Kohen Gadol, their service number.
Kohen Gadol continues the service, right? The regular Kohen
But
doesn't.
he's always there. The Kohen Gadol is always there,
Yeah,
not just Kohen.
it is derived from the inference from a less severe situation to a more severe one. A kal v'chomer. A Kohen disqualified because of physical deformity may partake of sacrificial foods. Nevertheless, if he performs service, he profanes it. How much more so should one who is in acute state of mourning and thus forbidden to partake of sacrificial foods? Yeah, as the verse says, I did not eat from in the state of acute mourning, profane his service if he performs it. So, in other words, the verse doesn't tell us. Right, this is one of, we say before the first Kaddish, every morning on page 26, we say Rabbi Shmuel and the 13 different attributes on how you can learn something out from the Torah that the Torah is not explicitly stating. One of it's called the Kal V'chomer. If it applies for a lesser, then it will apply for a greater, for example, right? So that's what it's saying over here.
Okay.
Right. Now, the verse doesn't say that he profanes it, that it becomes invalid. The verse doesn't say it, but we learned that out from that if in a case where you're in an acute state of mourning, you're forbidden in sacrificial foods. So in a place when you're sacrificial foods, you are not allowed to have, right? That means it's more acute, the law, right? Then all the more so you will profane the service if you continue the service.
Kohen.
Kohen, we're talking about the Kohen now.
So the Kohen also doesn't partake in the sin sin offering. Or just
Yeah,
Kohen Gadol.
we're talking here about a regular Kohen. Number 8. Although the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, may perform service while he's in a state of acute mourning, he is forbidden to partake of the sacrificial foods. So he has to do the service. Normally he would eat from that food, right? That he can't do. A loved one passed away, right?
It's the only way he's allowed to express his mourning.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know if it's that's a good question. Is it an expression of the mourning, or is it for another reason? Not certain. Good question. Right, and we learned this from Arain. Right, it says, "If I had partaken of the sin offering today, would I have found favor in God's eyes?" Similarly, he does not participate in the division of sacrificial food so that he could partake in the food in the evening.
Two sons died.
Yes, exactly. When his 2 sons died, so in the sin offering, he did not partake in, right? And that's what we learn out, that the sacrificial foods, he was the high priest, Kohen Gadol, right? He did the service, but he didn't participate in that food, right? Okay. By the way, okay. Interesting to see a deeper understanding from this, but not now. When a person is in an acute state of mourning, performs sacrificial service, he's not liable for lashes. It's a negative commandment. He is permitted to touch sacrificial foods, even though he did not immerse himself in a mikvah, for this safeguard was enforced only with regard to eating. With regard to touching objects, he's considered as pure, as will be explained in the appropriate place. Right? Acute state of mourning, you're not impure, right? You're impure if you went to the cemetery. because then you came in contact with a corpse, right? That would make you impure. So there's nothing impure about the person. It's just what they're because of this acute state of mourning, they are not on that lofty level, shall we say, of being able to do the service, right? But it doesn't make anything impure. What is meant by a person with acute state of mourning? One who lost one of the relatives for which he is required to mourn: mother, father, wife, son, daughter, brother, sister. Those are the 7. Okay. So on the day of the person's death, he is considered an acute state of mourning to scriptural law, and at night he is in acute mourning according to rabbinic law. So only that day till nightfall are you considered biblically in an acute state of mourning, right? Acute state means it's the nth degree, right? It doesn't. After that, you still have mourning because you have Shiva, right? The 7 days of sitting, as we will be sitting on Tisha B'Av, right? That's a state of mourning. Acute is only that day. Rabbinically, it's including that night. Okay, and now we have even beyond that is for the 7 days. But that's for a regular person. This is here, but this is in reference. This is only in reference for the kohen and the service in the temple, right? That's our reference over here, not a regular person sitting shiva for a loved one. That's not what the reference over here is. Okay. That's why the acute state of mourning is rabbinic only by night in reference to a kohen doing the service, right? Not an Israelite or any of us today when you sit shiva for a loved one that passed away. Number 10, when it was necessary to wait several days, and only afterwards a corpse was buried, for all those days after the day of the deceased passing, his relative is considered an acute state of mourning according to rabbinic law. So after that day passed, you're not biblically in an acute state of mourning anymore, right? You couldn't bury the person for whatever reason, right? Doesn't matter, for whatever reason. You couldn't bury them for a couple days. You're in a state of mourning, rabbinically, but not biblically. This also applies with regard to the day of burial, but not the following night. Okay. Therefore, if a close relative is a kohen dies, and he buries him after the day of his death, throughout the day of burial, he may not offer or partake of sacrificial sacrifices according to rabbinic law. He should then immerse himself and partake of sacrifices at night.
Go to cemetery for those 7 people,
Yes. Yes.
and he's not impure.
Huh?
He doesn't become impure.
He does become impure,
He still can come.
but he still has to do it, right?
Mhm.
The day on which a person hears a report that a relative has died within 30 days, and the day which he gathers his bones is considered a day of one's burial, but the restrictions do not apply at night, even according to rabbinic law. He should immerse himself and partake of sacrifices at night. So let's say you were, you heard about a relative passing away within 30 days of their passing, right? Or you're gathering their bones means you're burying them elsewhere, right? This cemetery is going to get destroyed and you're going to bury them elsewhere, for example, right? Or you want to bury them in Israel now, rebury them. So that's considered as the day of one's burial, right? For you, for that person, right? And the restrictions do not apply at night by rabbinic law, only that day. By rabbinic law, that you could not make an offering, but you then go to the mikvah, and at night you can partake of sacrifices. On the day of a close relative's death, by contrast, just as it's forbidden to partake of sacrificial foods during the day according to scriptural law, so too it's forbidden to partake of them that night according to rabbinic law, right? Because that's the day of their passing, the day of their passing and burial, right? So then at night, you would not be able to partake according to rabbinic law. The only exception of is the Paschal sacrifice, which may eat at night, as will be explained in the appropriate place. Okay. Number 11. Throughout the 7 days of mourning, a mourner should not send sacrifices to be offered in the temple. Indeed, he should not send even wine, wood, or frankincense. Right? People would give gifts of wood to the temple and so on. You're sitting Shiva, you do not give these gifts. Similarly, a person affected with saras, the skin disease, right, should not send his sacrifices to be offered in the temple. For as long as he's not fit to enter the camp of the Levites, he's not fit for the sacrifices to be offered. This is where the Levites stood, right? They sang, right? And right by there is where the Israelites would come and bring their offering. If you could not enter there, right, then don't bring your sacrifices. You have to be able to enter there in order that your sacrifices be brought. So when you're mourning, an Israelite is mourning, right? So don't give the offerings, don't bring offerings, don't offer offerings, right? Because you're not fit to come into the camp. There's an unresolved question whether a person under a ban of ostracism may send his sacrifices to be offered or not. Hence, if they were offered on his behalf, the obligation is satisfied.
Ostracized means separated.
Oh, let's say this person was being ostracized because the rabbi said you have to give a divorce, a bill of divorce to your wife, right? And you don't want to, and you're not doing it. So they will ostracize you, ban you. You can't pray with a minion. You don't do business with him for well, we learned these laws previously, right? All these things could be done, right? The question is, though, if this person brought an offering, can the offering be accepted or not? Because it's not inherent to his state of being, it's his actions only. When you're in an acute state of mourning, your being is affected. Here, it's your behavior, your actions are not appropriate ones. So the question is that sufficient to make you not capable to bring an offering, right? It's a question.
But he doesn't bring himself, he has to send it to a third person. Can't even do that. Okay.
And it's an open question, meaning it's unresolved.
Right. So then since it's unresolved, if someone brought it for him, right, he would satisfy his obligation. Right? That's all.
But it's a question if a person can or cannot bring it.
Right, but what happened if he did bring? What happened if he did bring? Is it valid or invalid? Since it's a question, how do you look at it? So we say you fulfill the obligation, right? Okay. Number 12, last halacha in this chapter. A person who is impure because of contact with a dead lizard or the like, and an uncircumcised person may send their sacrifices. And they are offered with the exception of Paschal sacrifice. Because Paschal sacrifices says clearly you have to be circumcised. Right? And they are offered with the exception, that sacrifice may not be offered for a person who is impure because of contact with a dead lizard. Nor may the Paschal sacrifice be offered for an uncircumcised person, as will be explained. No sacrifices at all are offered for a person who is impure because of contact with the corpse until he becomes ritually pure.
So even to a third person, okay.
Okay, let's just look at chapter 3. First halach, it's a positive commandment to send all impure persons away from the temple. It says, they shall not send, and they shall send away from the camp all those who have tzuras and zav, they're impure people, afflictions, and all those who are impure because of contact with a corpse. Okay, we're going to stop here. Any questions, any comments? All right, amazing. Hey, good jobs, everybody.